Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to show you how I've gone about making these rockers for the remaining section on the 109. You saw in my previous video how I bent the curve. That was on a piece of scrap I had lying around. 16 gauge galvanized, but obviously I'm not using galvanized, using regular mild steel 16 gauge. And as I said in the last video, I'm going to have to make it in two sections because it's a 26-inch section. It's going to be too difficult to bend to get that curve, so I'm going to have to make it in two pieces. And that's fine, and then set them on a straight edge and weld them together and then mount it. So this is one I made so far. I've got the curve on the top as well here. I'll show you how I've done that. You've seen how I've done this little and this curve, and this just needed a little tweaking to get it exact fit. I made this small sample piece out of 18 gauge that is obviously a lot easier to manipulate, hold up and check, and then I brought this down to the shop so I could make sure my curve line was pretty much smack on. You do have a little bit of adjustment once I'm welding anyway. I can lever it into position, but the closer the better basically. So I've got this one pretty much done. This guy matches very close my 18 gauge one, if you can see that, if you can see that. So what I've done, there's the one before the curve. I've got this, I'll show you, I'll change the camera position and I'll show you how I've done it. Basically, this is a section of a railroad track that a buddy gave me. I'm using it as my anvil. It's an awesome bit of kit because it's really heavy. It's got a slightly different curve on this side to this side. This side is a little sharper, but it makes for a great anvil basically. And so what I've done, I rotated it around this way. I drew a mark line to delineate where the start of the curve is. So basically I'll transfer that over to the other one, you see, and then we will make the curve. So I just put a little mark there, and put my glove on because this stuff is pretty sharp, and then just draw myself a line here. And also, I don't know whether you can see, I've made a mark on the track itself here where I essentially am aiming for. Like I say, we're going to line this back line up with these two marker lines and just start planishing over. Compare it to the other one here, you see. Could be a bit sharper, got a little ways to go. But man, that's very close. That's totally, actually pretty much smack on there. If you can see that, bring those two together. That's totally doable, that, because I can flex it, weld those two together. Obviously I'm going to mount a straight edge here and probably put a backing strip behind just to make sure this is dead straight. Yeah, it looks really good. So, and then obviously we've got to cut out a jacking point on this side, probably arches in about that far. Cutting the lip off and then arching through. Anyway, we're going to get this on the car and see how it compares. Okay, a little fiddling. I cut this back, not all the way back yet. I'm still gonna, I've got to take a little off of my patch up here and then scribe my line, make this just perfect. It's very close right there. Oh, you can see that. See, I've got to take a little burr off here to send it a little this way, and tuck that right in. That top edge is stopping it going further that way, but that is coming along quite nicely. So yeah, that's enough for tonight. I'm going to carry on with it tomorrow if I've got time. Okay, so I'm just making sure both panels are lined up with this end of the rocker. I did have to bend this rocker down still a little bit. It was still tweaked a little bit up that way. Yeah, so I bent that down just simply with a piece of wood clamp there and a vice grip, actually, just bending it down. It just had to come down a smidge. So we've got our curvature pretty much spot on. So what I'm going to do, I'm leaving a lot of waste up the top here so I can trim it in too, so I don't want to cut too much off, you know, so I can trim it into this piece. Clean all this off, obviously paint off ready for welding. I've straight lined this, as I say here. So I've straight lined this section where the jacking point is. This has got this section, which is the main column here. I guess the A-pillar coming all the way down, so that's going to get all pinch welded and spot welded from behind. I'll make the whole unit up and then I can cut my slot for the jacking point and put my flange on the end. I'm not going to try and bend this rocker because there's no way you're going to bend this 16 gauge without getting a bunch of creases in it. So I'll make the cut at the other end and weld a flange on and then spot weld that to my plate at the end. So let's get these welded together. I'll show you how I'm going to do that. Okay, so I got myself a new piece of angle iron, straight angle iron, and I basically just clamped it to that because now we know we've got a guaranteed straight edge. I've got a piece of a couple of stacks of metal underneath here, acting to flatten those lap joints together there, the pinch welds I should say, those joints, and then one of these guys, these levelers, to level the middle, and I'm just going to put a few spots in, just checking to make sure it's all level. Obviously cleaned everything both sides because we got access to the other side. I might run some spot welds on the inside as well to make sure it's a super strong joint. And so that's kind of it right now. They've lined up really nicely. Curve is good. I've checked both ends to the rocker, so we should be good for there. We're bound to need to do a little tweaking as we fit it, so let's get this welded up. As you can see, that's not too bad. We've got typical MIG weld spots really all the way. It's got a little tiny bit distorted at the top. That's because of that top edge there. The corners can tend to have a lot of heat. That's why I was going very carefully with the rag, making sure everything's cooled off. There's a little bit of light coming through up there. I'll spot that in. And I can take it out of the clamps and then finish it off down below here. Hopefully you can see that. It's you see that? Bring in the light there. You can see it's got pretty good penetration all the way through. I might check a few little bits here, but that's a nice strong weld there. That's why we want the gap, you know, so a little bit up there I want to do a little extra on, and I'll do here as well. What I've done now, I've flipped it over and I'm just checking areas where it didn't penetrate so well. I'm just putting tiny little bead on the inside. That obviously won't get ground off because that's all hidden. So let me just do that. Make sure this is super strong. Right, we'll go on the other side up. Might mention it before, what I seem to like to do here is you take the worst off with a grinder, regular grinding wheel, take the heads off, and then I can use a flat wheel, you know, one of those flat wheels, those aggressive ones, and that seems to be work really well. And then finish it off with this to get, you know, refine it and get it all looking nice. So let's see how we get on with that. Okay, back there a couple of days later now. Last time I saw you guys, welded this guy together. I'm pretty happy with the way this come out. I was gonna cut this end first to weld the flange on, ready for spot welding, but I thought I'll get my reference point, which is basically the jacking point. I took measurements off of my 6-cylinder and my 108 and to get the proportions, you know, of how far the eyebrow essentially comes out around the jack point. And I've got plenty of cut room here, got about 3/4 or over an inch to trim off of there, plenty up this, and this is the key point. So I'll tell you how I cut that out, but here's one of those blanking grommets, you know, so as long as that goes in, look at that, so that works nice, contoured nicely. There you go. So anyway, let's take this off and I'll show you on the bench how I cut it this morning. Right. Okay, back on the bench now. So basically I took my marks off of my 280, got this distance correct and this distance to here, drew on my straight edges and a little curve here, cut it out with a cutting wheel, you know, regular cutter wheel. Then went to my panel saw thing, and that struggled a bit for these curves. I could only go so far and this saw couldn't cope with it. I don't know, it's not the finest quality one, but so anyway, I got so far, sliced it with the cutter wheel, and then I came in with this guy, the finger belt sander, which is a really handy tool for these tight spaces. Came in and with 36 3M paper was able to refine this curve really nicely. I'll go back over it with the 60 grit and refine it, make sure there's no harsh edges, and from this point, once we got this, we can clamp it into position, get our reference point to cut the angle, weld our flange on, refit it again, check everything again, alignment. Then we'll probably make this cut on the top edge and then the final cut at the end here, and we're getting very close to welding this guy on. Just been working to refine the fitment of this. It's going pretty well. Got this centered. I'll show you what I've been working on is where it curves around to the end plate here. Right here I've got to take a little bit off of this and a little bit off down there to send it further up, because you can see the gap at the top there. So I'm just refining it. Obviously this gets covered by a flange anyway, but I want to get it as tight a fitting as possible. So that's what I'm just refining, just taking my time to get all this area real tuned up, and then we'll make our line, our cut line, and then the final cut here, and then we should be good to go, and this could get possibly welded in today. I'll see how it goes. So we refined it, we took a little off here, and it was able to send the patch further this way, and that's a pretty nice fit at the end here now. We're centralized on the jacking point, so now I can safely mark this off with my my pen here, and then we know we can glue a flange on, spot weld, boom boom boom, all the way. Now to get obviously this crunched together, I'm probably going to put some screws in, self-tapping screws, to hold it together, to keep it nice and pinch tight while I spot weld it, remove the screws, and then fill up where the screws were. So we've cut that off, see, and I've left it a little proud here because I'm going to put my flange on this side of it, and grind the weld flat and round it a little bit. I figured that would give me the best look, you know, instead of putting the join on this side. So it's going to be on the inside, probably about trying to see this one, I don't know, that's about 8 mil, maybe a centimeter, 10 mil or something like that. So we'll put a 10 mil flange on this, a little wider than this guy, and then that can be spot welded. I'm a tiny bit out on this. This guy seems to go up just a smidge up. I don't think that's going to matter because we've got our hiding trim that comes along here, see, like this, so any deviation is going to be hid underneath here. But you're talking about a millimeter, 2 millimeters or something, so I don't think that's come out too bad really. And once we get this all sealed up with whatever type of undercoating I decide to use, that should look pretty factory, you know, making sure I get my crease there, keep it as close to the original as possible. So make sure that's in focus there. Okay, so we've got the flange piece. I'm gonna tack weld it just in a couple of places. See, there it goes, that's the flange that will come in. Tack weld it on these corners here, and then remove it, and then finish off the weld, and then we know we've got the right angle. So I just trace this piece, you see, and then we can spot weld through that guy. I'm going to thin it out a little bit. This is a little on the wide side, but I thought I'd get it welded on first, and then I can grind it down to a better shape. Okay, there's the flange. I put a few stitch welds on there just to hold that. Now we know that's in the right position and angle and everything. I see those little magnets, they're amazingly strong, sort of rare earth magnets to hold it in position. So now I can transfer that to the bench and finish off the welding. So I've welded that little flange on there. It came out really nice actually. See, I just ground that again just like I did the join on the rocker. I used a grinding wheel, a flat wheel, and then the little angle grinder, and refined it with some conditioning discs. And now this is my line I'm going to cut and refine. I've put some spot welds on the inside as well because I've got access, and why not. But you can see see if you can see there, the weld line came out real nice. You can barely see any of it, so great, that should work lovely. A few actually weeks later after I last shot any video to the rocker, but today I got a few hours to mess around with it. So I've remounted the fender, just roughly, just a few bolts at the top, at the front, and I'll bring you in closer, but I wanted to make sure that we're all lined up on this new piece here. So we've bolted the fender on just in a few places, a few key places, and this is going to bolt straight onto my new piece here, because I've got to set in those hidden nuts before I weld the final panel on, because I want to make sure. I may have to do a little fiddling behind here, and I don't want to weld this closed and then I won't have access. So yeah, I've kind of roughly held the trim here. I get those, but that's located pretty much where it's going to be, and I was a little concerned that this was down a little bit, but it looks like that's going to work perfectly, and that'll finish that area off. So we're all good on the fitment. Now I can put those hidden nuts in there, check the fit again, make sure the bolts bolt through, and now we can seal this guy up. This is a drain hole here. You know, if the water gets into this area here, it can drain through behind the trim. But as you can see, my piece here, I don't know whether you can see it on the camera, it's just probably about a millimeter and a half low. But as I say, the trim will cover that little mistake, so I'm very happy with the way that's come out. So let's get these holes marked, and then I can cut my captured nuts into that guy. These are the ones I bought. These little, let me get this undone. See these little flat, hopefully that's in focus, these little flat captured nuts. They're almost identical to the original ones. And so I've got to cut those and slot those in. The other type is this type. And these are with very large flanges on them. And obviously I can't get them in because I that I can't have the fender on this side because it hit the flange, and I can't have it on the inside because I don't want to cut a great big hole accommodating that. So this one, that's more of a universal one, will do the trick. This is an original bolt set screw, and that screws in there real nice and tight. That'll work great. So there's the 2 mount holes here. So what I'm going to do is, essentially we've got to cut a slot in the top and then try and work our way in, so this guy goes in like that and sandwiches behind. So I'll cut the slot. Let's have a look. I can do this by eye actually. So the slot has got to be essentially up there. We cut a series of holes here, or even actually might do a plunge cut with the grinder, and then we can slot these guys behind. Okay, I've actually shut the door because I'm filming this during all that fire scare. You know, we've had many fires in California, and the last thing I want to do is freak the neighbours out if they see sparks from the grinder. I always have a fire extinguisher on hand just in case, you never know. So let's get that ground in. That's it. There you go. Let's do the other one. It's got a little bit of flop to it, you know, so we can adjust it. And what I'm going to do is I'll paint some rust encapsulator where I've cut fresh metal, just to make sure, you know, because if moisture gets in here, you don't want it rusting out from here. So that looks pretty good. Now we've just got to drill our holes. Push around a bit. Hopefully we've got all this lined up properly. Okay, we've got that bolted on the top. Let's see, now these aren't bolts here, they're sort of Phillips screws with a very heavy core, same as the bolts up top, but they're Phillips. These are new ones. What's this? Bend that out a little bit, so that's why it's good to get this tested before I weld that thing on at the bottom, the rocker, because it makes it a little easier if there's any problem. So that fits lovely. That'll go like that. Nice continual straight line. You can see that. So we've got nice there. We've got the drain hole clear. Obviously, I'll clean all this up. Obviously, well, it's all going to be painted, isn't it? So that goes on there like that. Phillips screw at the end there. We can now be sure that we can carry on and know our panel fitment's going to be good. Might have a little bit of a proud spot at the back here that I can grind up where the weld is. It's just touching a back corner and just pushing it out probably no more than 1 millimeter this way. So that will set in with, because there's 2 mounting bolts here and up top on this inner flange here. I'll just knock off that edge, that sharp edge. That's easy enough to do on fitting. So I'm going to take this off again, treat this area with rust encapsulator, and then now we can carry on with the next stage, is welding the rocker on. So this piece, this bracket, is on the inside of the fender, just around here on the inside. and I'm not sure what it is exactly. It's not on either of my other 108, so if someone can let me know, I'll put it obviously back. But what exactly is this thing? Doesn't seem to do anything, serve any purpose. Like I say, mounting bolt straight in there, probably about midway on the fender. Alright, so that's that. Right, we've clamped it back in place again, the rocker, and I'm pretty happy with the fitment. I've got to push up here slightly to get my mark. I've put tape under here. I might have missed it a little bit, but this should mark on the metal, okay, this special marker. So I've marked already my end cut here. Trying to keep the joint just under that lip there, so hiding the weld underneath the trim essentially. So that's all pinched in nice. Obviously got drill holes ready for my spot welding. Okay, a few days later now, actually about a week. Took me a little time to fine tune this panel. I had a little bit of a gap here, as I said, that I didn't like, but just a little bigger than I would like. And there was a touch point here and along here. So as long as I took those high points off, I was able to essentially raise it and close the gap. So it took a little time to fine tune the panel, take it on and off a lot. Made all my spot holes along here and on the end here. These two small ones, I'll show you in a sec, are for screws, because obviously there's no way for me to pinch that flat when it's in the on position there. So I'll put screws in there, and that will hold it nice and snug. I'll weld my spots, remove the screws, and then re-weld those holes up. So that should hold that nice and tight. I put copper primer on all the facing edges of where these flanges go together to stop any rust areas, you know. And once this is all sealed up, I'll be injecting, I think I'm going to use that CRC stuff that it's like a wax oil. It's supposed to be very good for this kind of thing. It's been treated with rust encapsulator in here as well as I've been going, and in here, so I think we're good to go. So I'm going to fit this on here and get ready for tack welding it on. So basically get that in that position, and I'll move the camera over. There you go. So you can see I put copper primer there as well, and let's get this fitted. These are sheet metal screws. Obviously pre-drilled them. These aren't self-tappers or anything, so because they're going through 16 gauge steel, so that holds that tight. That squidges that nicely together. Okay. Bit awkward actually, getting under here. I made me giddy the other day. So what we're going to do, I'm going to tack weld along here, and then I'll do my spot welding down here. So right now I'll put a clamp on just to hold it in position. See, it flexes down, but that's okay. It's a nice fit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a few spots in on this lower one here. You can see this big gap here, and then I can gently pull it down to level as I go, because this has got a little bit of kind of spring to it one way or another because of the way the pinch weld is. You know, it's not obviously perfect, it's a little waviness, so when you pinch it, it tends to torque it. So just little spot weld down here, hold that, then reposition, spot weld, reposition, so we keep everything as level as possible. Yeah, right at the very bottom there, and then I'll do a spot so it's anchored there, and then I'll lever it. So here goes. Okay, so you can see we're working our way from the pinch weld all the way up until about here is where I'm level. So I'm just holding this area so we're nice and secure, and then we'll pull the screwdriver out, you see, and then we can start pushing this back and leveling a little further here, and then working our way along. And once I get this point anchored, then I'll start spreading myself out along the weld. Like I say, I think the biggest challenge on something like this is just being patient, you know, taking your time. Just a long socket bar here. You get in there, I think. That end, you see, we'll push it because it's thicker at this end. So anything you can use really. Where's my clamp? I got these wood quick clamps. They got rubber ends, so they grip a little better than the metal ones. Just push that guy in there. Kind of a Frankenstein setup, just to get the pressure where you need it, but whatever works, you know. Right, pretty much got it all welded on now, spot welded my end flange there, and tacked weld all the way along. Quite a long process actually. I've been going at it for some time. I actually had a break, went for a ride on the bike, get a cup of tea. But what I'm going to do now is grind all these welds up with the grinder first, and then probably the flap wheel, possibly the little needle belt sander thing, because I've got to cope with this curve here. But a lot of the spot welds are on that very top edge there, so I should be able to get to it with the flat wheel on the grinder, and then finish up with my little oh, what's it, the angle one, the die grinder with conditioning discs on it. Back and forth, grinding it, flat wheel, and then the little angle grinder with the 36 and 60 combination of that. And what I did, I ground down, and then that would expose very close to the new and old metal, ground down the tips of the spots, and then that really shows up where I've missed. Wire brush, you know, I was using this guy, wire brushing it as I go, and then coming back and just picking out the bigger holes that I'd missed, because it's very easy underneath the car looking up, and makes it kind of difficult to make sure you get everything. So a little to-ing and throwing, you know, grinding, little spot weld grinding and what have you. One tool that really worth its weight in gold is this guy, this needle finger belt sander. It was wonderful for getting into these curves, and once you use your hand as a guide, and you can really refine and just take off the tips of the welds, because you really want to make sure you're just touching the tips of the weld, because you don't want this metal thinning out, because it's thicker metal. We've got a little play there, but as little as possible. So this was wonderful for getting into these curvatures. So just picking out those little spots, that was great. And I say it was a combination back and forth. So I've ground all my spot welds down. As you can see from the front here, And just working our way round. This contour is pretty tricky to get, you know, nice and smooth. We do have a little leeway, obviously, because we've got trim and all of the chip guard's going to hide it all. So any deviate, there are a few little pinholes here and there. But the thing is, you're running the risk of thinning metal if you keep spot welding and grinding, spot welding mine. So you kind of got to call it and just say, you know what, that's good enough, it's solid. And then come in, I've got an epoxy filler, Pour 15 epoxy filler. It'll fill a few, there's probably about 4 or 5 little pinholes here and there. And that hardens up and it'll stop any rust or moisture getting in. And then obviously this is going to get a rust encapsulator, then an epoxy primer, and all the chip guard and paint and what have you. Quite a patch. You can see it's lined up quite nicely, if you can see down the body there. Overall, a lot of patches in this. Obviously we've got 2 here, we've got 1 here, 1 up here, that's 4. Then we've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 with the rocker, and then that little guy up there, that's 10. Okay, so I thought I'd just do a quick shot of it all with a rust encapsulator on it. That's just one thin coat of rust encapsulator, and then I'm going to go in and with the Pour 15, like little epoxy fill, just to fill up any like tiny little pinholes I may find, and then another coat of the rust encapsulator. So I'm pretty happy with it. I hope you've enjoyed this series of videos repairing this rocker. I'm not going to do the same series on the other side because it's essentially the same, but almost identical kind of damage. So this is a good chunk of the work on this right corner all done. I've just got to fill in that section about this big of the floor, and that's easy, you don't need to see that. That's just a flat panel, doesn't even have any raised beads in it. So then I'm going to attend to what I've discovered underneath all that undersill, those few little pinholes midway down, and then I'm going to work on my next set of videos. I'll be working on that wheel well, the rusted wheel well on the in the side of the trunk there. I think a lot of you like to see that because that's a common rust point on these 108, 109s. And then from that point on, I'm not sure what I'm going to attack. I might give myself a little break from the welding on this side, so because essentially all this side of the car will be done then after the wheel well's done. And then what I might do is shift the car slightly this way and remove the subframe. I've got some ideas about supporting the engine and removing the subframe at the bottom. I know there's a gantry that you can fit, but I've got some other ideas that I'm going to be refining and working on. That will enable me to really tidy all the suspension, make sure all the bushings and engine mounts, all the frame towers and all that, the rubber towers, the subframe towers will be all new. The engine mounts on these 6.3s are quite expensive, but that's something I'm saving up for because it needs doing, and you've got to get the right one. So I think that's it for this video. I know it's been a long one. Thanks a lot for watching. I really appreciate it, and any comments are always welcome. Please like and subscribe and share if you like what you see, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, take care guys. Thanks.